At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
A warmer friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Decent Family Podcast, and we've got an excellent podcast for you. As joining me in segment number 2, we've got Justin Perri aboard, who does amazing work over at Shot Call You Bets, and he recently launched his own show, the Justin Perri Show. It's spelled Perri. We're going to be diving in with him about how he's taking a look at the Sweet 16, what he's taking a look at in terms of these matchups, where he finds a little bit of value and where he doesn't find a lot of value. We'll also talk a little bit about the NIT, CBI. He's been playing those games as well. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday, as we had some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, there's the naming does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline, and the other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Main questions I have been getting is how much I'm taking a look at sort of these off-season moves in terms of coaching hires, the transfer portal, what have you, and certainly have been diving in on them a little bit. I don't spend a lot of time taking a look at like coaching moves as of right now. I'll be diving in on that once the season wraps up. Like once there's no money to be made in the 2023-24 season, certainly going to go to work starting on the 2024-25 season, as your work is never done when you take a look at college basketball with 362 D1 teams as of right now. You certainly have to be diving in, and I do think that there are some great coaching moves that were made, like Danny Sprinkle heading on over to Washington. He's been a fast riser in the sport of college basketball, but I like that move. I certainly do think that Vanderbilt got a good hire in Mark Byington. Now, Vanderbilt in general has just been snake-bitten their last few hires, and it's really been injuries that have doomed Vanderbilt. Like, regardless of who has been the coach, Jerry Stackhouse, you go back to the Drew era for them as well. That has been rough, to say the least. Kyle Smith going to Stanford. Stanford should have probably made this move last offseason when they had an alum of the program out there ready to go, and instead you've got Cal being able to swoop in and get Mark Madsen, but I thought that they got a very good coach in Kyle Smith. But this is going to be a lot of chatter that I'm going to be having, for one, a little bit closer to next week. Once we get into the Final Four and we just don't have a lot of games, I'll really be starting to dive in there, and two, once the season wraps up as well, because we still have money to be made this time of year, and this is a gambling-centric podcast. There's really nothing to be made with regards to 2024-25 season quite yet, and even if you're trying to take a look at those futures as of right now, the market is very, very fluid. There's only one champion every single year, so there's just not a lot out there. Once we get done with this season, we'll certainly be diving into the next. And for those that know this podcast, you know that I spend like June, July taking a look at conference previews for the America East, for Conference USA, so they're going to be very thoroughly dove into. Every single podcast is going to have a conference preview podcast, but it's just hard to have a lot of takes with regards to transfer portal right now as well, because I wish I could put it any other way. It's almost as easy to create a list of guys that aren't in the transfer portal as it is guys that are in the transfer portal as well. So, just with a fluid situation, trying to run down a list of players that have entered in the transfer portal the last few days, that'd be very difficult, but do like a lot of the coaching hires that have been made. Certainly I'm going to have a lot more thoughts on that when the nets are cut down in a few weeks. So, that's certainly on tap, but that's certainly going to be coming a little bit later on. But let's take a look at what we all did get in terms of the college basketball action that we did get on Monday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The season ends for Chicago State with a cover, as they were really able to make you some quality money this year. They go 14-13-2 against the spread, and if you, like me, laid 3.5, 4, even 4.5 points with Fairfield, those missed free throws at the end were very, very costly. 77-74 is the final on this one. Fairfield gets up double figures in the second half, and they've got a few chances to be able to get the cover, but you saw Caleb Fields miss a free throw with about 6 seconds left, and then Jasper Floyd misses a free throw with 1 second left. That would have been able to give you the cover. That was a little bit rough, but Fairfield, they are on to the semifinal of the CBI. For Fairfield, they go 8 of 22 from 3, and for Chicago State, 3 of 16 from 3, but Wesley Carded, he came to play. 25 points for a Chicago State team that played even up on the turnover battle, 9-9, and they actually won the rebound battle, 35-25, but Caleb Fields supplying 32 points and going 0-1 at the free throw line to make very many of us salty. That was able to get the job done for Fairfield. You saw Arkansas State as a favorite be able to get the win and cover 74-61, as favorites in the CBI went 3-1. That was a lone cover from an underdog, as for Arkansas State, they go just 8 of 33 from three-point range, but they win the turnover battle 15-6. They win the rebound battle 42-31, and while okay, he was able to give Montana a pretty okay performance with 15 points, 8 rebounds, but every single Arkansas State starter was able to put up double figures. Isaiah Nelson, 17 points, 12 boards. They're into the semifinal, and they'll be meeting up against High Point, who was a High Point against Cleveland State as a 4.5-point favorite. They just completely romped the Vikings, 93-74, the final. As for High Point, they go 9 of 26 from three-point range. They absolutely dominate the rebound battle by a count of 40-33. They did a nice job taking care of the ball, and they were able to get a nice 27-point performance out of Abdoulaye Thiam. You were able to get as well 10 rebounds out of Trey Benham. This has been a High Point team that has been really good on the glass all season long, so a nice winning cover there. And it's been a High Point team that has been able to make you quite a bit of money this year against the spread. It's a High Point team that is now 19-11-2, and for Seattle, it's been a little bit of an up and down season for them, much like their game against Evansville was up and down. They trailed by 6 points at the half, but laying about 8.5, they were able to win, and they were able to cover 71-57 the final. Evansville was playing without their top scorer, Ben-Hugh Maricus. They were just down in general, a lot of bodies, and for Evansville, they went 6 of 12 at the free throw line. Seattle went 21 of 26. That was a big key in this one, as Jason Christophilius, 22 points for Seattle. Their run is going to continue out there in the CBI, and hey, our DK Network write-ups doing a little bit better right now. We had the under in Purdue Fort Wayne IPFW against Tarleton State, and for Tarleton State, they lose this game outright 73-72, and after it looked like this thing was going to get way out of hand. This was a very fast start. You had 49 points up on the board in the first, I would say, about 10.5 or so minutes. Things really slowed down, as for Purdue Fort Wayne, they go 7-21 from three-point range, and they win the rebound battle by a count of 40-35. Meanwhile, for Tarleton, they go just 7 of 23 from distance, and they did get a nice 16-point performance off the bench from Adam Musa, but for IPFW, AK Fort Wayne, they did a nice job being able to play relatively even up with regards to the turnover battle. They lose that battle 15-13, but they also had 21 points out of Rasheed Bello, and they also had 15 rebounds from Eric Mulder. And if you're taking a look at what we're all getting in college basketball right now, it has been very much an overwhelming season, as the overall this season hitting at 51%, 2,870 overs, 2,762 unders, while favorites, they continue to hit right around about 50.7%, 2,839, 2,759, and 1 under against the spread. And if you're looking at the last 7 days, this is NCAA tournament, NIT, CBI, everything all jammed together. Favorites hitting at 55.4%, 51, 41, and 2 against the spread, while the overs, they're at 52.7%, 49 overs, 44 unders, and I believe a 1 push thrown in there as well. So that's what we all saw on college basketball on Monday, and that's what we're getting trend-wise coming up next. Let's prepare for the Sweet 16 and take a look at some of these smaller tournaments with our good friend Justin Perri over at Chalk Quality Bets. Right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. to Love You Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it is always great to be joined by this man. He is the host of a show that is very well named, The Justin Perri Show, which the host of that is Justin Perri. He does terrific work over at Shot Quality Bets, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. I know that for those that are looking for his baseball work, he does a great job over at Pitchers List as well. And you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Justin Perri, the number 8 altogether. That last name is spelled Perri. And Justin, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Greg, it is so much of a pleasure to be here. Excited to talk a little bit about the Sweet 16. It is one of the most exciting weekends in college basketball. I think, the field's still wide enough where there's a lot of speculation left and still some intrigue about who could emerge for Phoenix. But yeah, baseball season's right here too. It's a fun time for us who cover both sports.
It is a fun time of year. And Justin, when it comes to getting set for the Sweet 16, how do you go about it? Because I think that it's just so difficult to take a look at recent form versus what we've seen all season, because we've got north of 30 data points on all of these teams. But as we know, a team like NC State, they've gotten as hot as lava. And a team like Houston, they got by Texas A&M, but it was a little bit wobbly. How do you sort of strike that balance of trying to figure out, all right, should we go with recent form or should we go with what we've seen all season?
It's tough. Recent form can be a little deceiving. A one-game sample is never really something I like to hang my hat on. I try to, take a look past exactly what a final score might be trying to tell me, because one game is not going to really be enough of a description for you to truly understand how a team is going to perform going forward. And yeah, Houston honestly didn't play very well at all. And our shot quality data really showed that they hit some tough shots to kind of keep that ahead, and that Texas A&M had plenty of chances to really maybe win that game. I think we all felt that watching it, and Houston really did defend that onslaught of an attack from the Aggies quite well. But I'm not really going to sit there and be like, all right, well, Houston had a tough time. Now they're going to definitely have a tough time next. I don't think it always works like that. They can come out now especially with the time to prepare, right? That was the second game of a 2 games in 2 days or 3 days type of play. But now they get a nice, almost a full week here to recuperate and get ready for another big game. I don't think you want to say, all right, well, I'm going to bet the teams that look good and the teams that struggled are just going to drop off now. I fully expect the Cougars to be ready to go against Duke here.
Yep, I do expect so as well. And just how do you take a look at that game involving Houston versus Duke? Because I think a lot of people fail to realize that Duke has really slowed down ever since John Shire has gotten into the fold. And it is a Duke defense that has been pretty good ever since he's gotten there. And right now with Houston, they're a 4-point favorite at a total of 134. And not sure what your numbers say, but I feel like we've gotten just a little bit of a discount based on what we saw a few nights ago with Duke completely mopping the floor of James Addison and Houston having that struggle.
Yeah, we have this one pretty close to market, right at 135, make it about a 5-point loss for Duke at the moment. Going to be tough. That James Madison win looked really good. I think looked really convincing, but James Madison might have just been a really great matchup for Wisconsin, and Duke kind of ripped them apart. I was off on that, and the shot quality data doesn't really give much comfort to us James Madison supporters. It was still quite a beatdown by 25 instead of almost 40. But nonetheless, Duke's looking good. Vermont and James Madison kind of looked pretty easy. I don't know. I think this is going to be a Houston defense that's going to be a real test. They're going to have the size and the athleticism to keep up with them at every single position. And I think at this point in the tournament, you need to look at like a player-by-player matchup in terms of how the starters are going to be lining up and how the schemes are going to be playing against each other. I do think that Houston can probably emerge victorious in most of those types of things. I'm not really ready to crown Duke and say they're going to upset. This is going to be a great game, but this should probably be Houston emerging victorious, but I'm not sure they're going to cover 4.5 points.
I think that this is going to be a really fun one, and with this Duke team, they've been one of the more efficient offenses out there in all of college basketball. Joining me on the show, we do have our good friend Justin Perri over at Shot Quality Bets. Joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and just what do you make out of some of these games that we're going to be seeing on Thursday involving teams that have a little bit of a different tempo? Because I take a look at the games for Friday, and I don't think that we've got a wide range of tempo shifts. I feel like the teams are relatively slower, playing slower teams, faster teams are playing faster teams. But I take a look at those games for Thursday. Iowa State versus Illinois, two distinctly different styles. Alabama and North Carolina certainly do play a very similar up-tempo pace, but North Carolina is certainly much more of a defense-oriented team, and Alabama is certainly much more of an offense-oriented team. How do you just take a look at those matchups for Thursday involving a lot of teams that play just different styles going at one another?
The Alabama-North Carolina game is going to be so interesting, right? Because how Alabama has been playing is just that they are pushing the pace on everybody, just playing that, offense style of basketball that we've seen become a strategy for, teams that can just outgun. And I don't know. I do think it has a chance to work against North Carolina. I think this could be a very tough game for North Carolina to win. I did like the dominating performance that they put on against Michigan State, but I think Michigan State has continuously struggled with good, solid front courts, and North Carolina definitely has that in Armando Bacot. Alabama can kind of shoot over that and kind of makes anyone's defense kind of obsolete with just the type of offense they run and how fast they move. And I don't know if North Carolina keeps up. It could definitely get a little bit sticky for them. Transition and the three-point defense are obviously going to be pretty big. You look at what North Carolina can do defending some of these three-point shots, it's not great, right? So in terms of the shot quality, in terms of looking at the which is the location-based estimation of the probability of the shots going in that a defense allows or an offense creates, it's dynamic like that. But the defense for North Carolina, they catch and shoot 3%. They're rated 297th, Greg. That's pretty low. Off the dribble 3-point percentage allowed, in terms of shot quality, 317th. So this is a severe weak spot for North Carolina. If you can go in and shoot, they're going to let you get good looks from three. So, yeah, the open three rate allowed 25.4% for the North Carolina defense, 293rd in the nation. You cannot be giving this team open threes, especially after everybody bet the over for that last game with Alabama against Grand Canyon. I think this could be one that now really could just be a shooting exhibition because neither team defends the three-point line too well.
I do think that we could see a lot of wide open outside shots, and that is something to be taken a look at. And then when it comes to these Sweet 16 games, there's one line that stands out among the rest, and that's because we've got one line that is greater than 8 as we record this. That'd be the UConn versus San Diego State game, and this is a game involving the two teams that were in the title game last year, with UConn being a 10.5 to an 11-point favorite. And I want to get your thoughts here because UConn has been a bulldozer. I don't think that there's any question they have been the most dominant team thus far in college basketball this season, but I look at this spot and I think San Diego State has a chance to be able to hang within 11. I'm not sure if you agree/disagree, but for UConn, I do think that this game being in Boston, it helps them out quite a bit, and I do think that San Diego State eventually goes down, but I just like the way that San Diego State has been able to operate on defense, and feel like people are sleeping on Jaden Ledee a little bit as well.
They probably are. I mean, San Diego State was one of my big wins. I was just out in Vegas for this whole weekend. It was a great time, and Circa just so wisely has great gear at that lid store. I grabbed myself a San Diego State Aztec shirt. It was great. I love it. I love celebrating a big win with a little school memorabilia. So, yeah, I stocked up. But Donovan Clingan is really just a next-level rim protector, shot alter type player. Going inside with his presence is just difficult. I think there's arguably no other player in college basketball as difficult to score on than him. Zach Yee does not have that same defensive prowess to me in terms of the size. You superpower it with the size they have at guard all around him. I don't know. This is really a tough one. Shot quality is going to put this at 11 right there. It's going to be difficult, but I have a hard time thinking that UConn isn't just going to continue rolling. I think a big showing from San Diego State here against Yale was a little bit maybe just kind of the end of the wick on the luck candle for Yale, who, got there on a buzzer beater, who got past Auburn, crazy run for Yale. Awesome run for Yale. Really happy about it. It was a great showing, and it was great for the tournament, obviously, in a year where it feels like, you just took a bite of a bunch of Tums. There's so much chalk. I do think this could be a spot where maybe that softness of Yale and like how easy that matchup was could lead to people thinking San Diego State is better than they are or at that quality challenge UConn. I don't know that they are. They really weren't last year. We talked about it. It might have been even a little bit of a boring finale. They won by 11, right? So our projection is the exact same as the final score was last year, 75-64. Look, don't be shocked if it turns out pretty similarly. I think a 10-point win for UConn right now is pretty probabilistic against almost anybody except maybe like the other one seeds in like Marquette. But other than that, they're going to steamroll a lot of teams.
And I'm so glad that you bring up Marquette, because the one real low seed that we've got here in the Sweet 16, and you mentioned it, if this were a serial for the NCAA tournament this year, it'd be Count Chocula, because my goodness gracious, there's a whole lot of chalk in this field. But that said, NC State is a 6.5-point underdog against Marquette, and while DJ Burns has been able to capture the imagination of so many people, and while this has been a great run for NC State, I look at NC State getting 6.5 points, and I just go back to thinking, man, if this line were placed before the NCAA tournament, this line should be closer to 8/9, and I think we're getting great value with the way that NC State has been able to capture so many people's attention, because I feel like Marquette should be able to win this game quite comfortably.
I do agree. I think Marquette sans UConn, one of the best trios of players in the tournament right now, in Cam Jones and Oso and Tyler Kolek. Those are three really great players. Marquette's depth just continues to impress me. You're right about NC State sort of getting that recency bump, and that's fair. I mean, they're playing great. Don't get me wrong. DJ Burns, type of player who can maybe make things go a little differently than what the charts suggest, perhaps. I mean, he is a force to be contested with down low, the rebounding. It's a lot of fun, honestly. So, I don't know. I think it would take a very, very strong performance, and probably I think the cover would look a lot more like, a backdoor attempt than anything. I would expect them to have trouble with Marquette out the gate and maybe figure it out late. They're a team that fights, but you let Marquette's shooters play well just a bit, start shooting a few shots nicely. I mean, this is a Marquette team that truly attacks the rim efficiently. I mean, they force turnovers on defense, run well in transition off of them, and the passing, the spacing, all really good. The only thing is they probably don't get to the line enough in terms of driving the rim and their frequency. But yeah, 8.5 is probably where I would set this as well. A nice discount on Marquette, which is maybe even surprising considering what the news and the headlines have been all weekend, which was favorites. You may still be able to get some value on favorites. Don't let what you're hearing cloud your process. If you have a edge, it should be independent of the noise.
Yep, I think that that's so important as well, and value is value, whether you're laying a number, whether you're taking the points, or looking at just some of these totals as well. As Justin Perri does such great work over at Chalk Quality Bets, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and do want to get your thoughts on this as well, because we're recording this for Tuesday. We're going to be seeing some NIT games, and we've got the semifinal of the CBI coming up as well. Have you been betting any of these smaller tournaments, and do you see any value perhaps for these Tuesday games that we are going to be getting?
Yeah, I actually have bet a little bit of like the NIT. I think these other alternate tournaments, if you want to call them that, get to be pretty fun and playable once you get into the later rounds. You don't want to bet the first round of the CBI or the NIT because you're just not really sure of who is coming to play and who is just phoning it in, coach maybe on the way out. Like, you want to give it a round to sort of weed out the ones that are going to fade away and try to get to some basketball where the teams are truly playing, both teams are truly playing for the best shot and to try to win, right? Because that's what allows your research to, I guess, be in the proper environment, right? Like, if you get into one of these games no one cares or half one team doesn't care, like, okay, Yeah, good luck. You're just hoping you chose the team that cares. And good luck with that mystery. But yeah, some fun basketball for sure. I don't really know what I'm thinking yet. That's Arkansas State High Point and Fairfield Seattle, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are really interesting games for Fairfield coming out of the MAC, playing a tough one against Chicago State. I do like what Fairfield has been able to develop. It's probably one of the most challenging tournaments to handicap. I mean, March Madness might be right up there, but you do probably have the help of the betting public. These games can be pretty, difficult to get right. I do think that High Point should be able to rip through the competition here. They look like they're just playing at that uber efficient level. They dominated Cleveland State. It wasn't really even too close. I would probably put Arkansas State in that same kind of range. Arkansas State had trouble against Bethune-Cookman. I worry about a team coming in like that. And I know the defense for High Point is definitely a struggle. It can allow some good shots. Maybe Arkansas State can step up and get it done. But yeah, Arkansas State coming off a bigger win. I just trust High Point to stay in that form.
This High Point team has been really interesting to take a look at. And they do such a good job of being able to hit the glass as well. Right now, I'm seeing an opener right in that neighborhood about 2.5 or so. And that's a number I would certainly be willing to lay. And Justin, what I'm always willing to do is have a great chat with you as you do an amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And as I was alluding to, you do a great job on the baseball front as well. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
For sure, yeah. I mean, Justin Perri Show took a little bit of a break. We had to go to Vegas and handle some business this weekend, but we'll be back doing that. That's the home for everything I'm doing, the way that you can find out about all that's going on, baseball, basketball, the whole 9 yards, is just sort of following me on Twitter at JustinPerri8, checking out the show. We're still going to be doing a lot of BetCast stuff, which is my live betting show with shot quality bets, where we use live regression data to attack the games that are going on in the minute, which is a lot of fun. We'll be doing some NBA, so that'll be coming up soon as well. So there's a lot of fun stuff there. And yeah, I'll be writing some fantasy baseball articles, doing some props. I think this season are going to be mixed into my bag a little bit. So very excited for that as well, betting, but going to do some standard analysis and reporting as well, which I think is going to be very fun. Not all betting, but, still bringing the analytic touch to everything we do, checking out the data, using what Pitcher List builds. I'm really excited to be contributing there again. I actually wrote there back in 2018, my first ever sports job. So returning home to the place that sort of helped start my whole career. Here we are. So it's going to be a fun baseball year.
Oh, it sure is going to be. The people over at Pitcher List do a really nice job, and that is going to be a lot of fun to be able to take a look at this great game of baseball. Alex Fast, by the way, he does a great job over there at Pitcher List. So you want to give him a follow if you're a fan of baseball, and if you're a fan of just any sports, baseball, college basketball, football, you want to be following Justin because he does a great job on so many fronts and always lends great insights here. Big thanks to Justin for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to get our good friend Justin Perri aboard. He does such good work over at Shot Quality Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love. Top of that, I know that he's doing a great job with his own show, the Justin Perri Show, looking at all things college basketball. I know that he, much like myself, also getting primed up for some baseball as well. Just a wealth of knowledge in general, so great to be able to get him aboard. Big thanks to Justin for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_D1. We are going to be going with the two NIT games first. And then the 2 CBI games, those are going to be at the bottom. That'll keep things very clean and easy with regards to being able to just go in order. We are down to only about a few games left, so we must cherish every one of these. And let's get started with this first NIT game. This is 609, 610 on the betting board. Ohio State, they play host to Georgia, and Georgia is an underdog of 8.5 points. So on this game, you're going to be finding it between 150 and 150.5, and I did set Georgia as a 9-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Ohio State. I recognize that this is a big number, but for Ohio State, they have really been able to transform their offense ever since Jake Diebler took over this team. As a matter of fact, you take a look at the month of March, they have scored at least 74 points in all but one of their games in this month, and that was when they scored 73 points in that game against Rutgers. So they have been rock solid with that regard. As a matter of fact, I believe that they have covered all but 2 out of their last 10 games. So this has been an Ohio State team that has been a machine, and I think that they're going to be able to dominate things down low. Felix Opara is able to give you about 6.5 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest, while you do have Russell Chewa on the flip side for Georgia, who's been able to do a good job. True 7-footers, able to give you about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game. They just don't have a lot of size down low. It's a Georgia team that all season long, they've really dealt with their issues on the glass, 252nd in all of college basketball in terms of rebound rate. And for Ohio State, it's not like they've been incredible with regards to their rebound rate. They're checking in more around about 74th, but I do think that them being at home is also going to be a big X factor as well. This has been an Ohio State team that in general, it's just played with a little bit of a different, shall we say, swagger about them when they've been at home rather than when they have been on the road. And this is a Georgia defense that they also do fall off when they're away from home. Georgia 155th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 4 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. That's honestly not a bad split, but you've got an Ohio State team that they're clocking in for the season about 116th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 8.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. And for Georgia, this is not necessarily an amazing shooting team. They shoot about 33.5% from 3 as a collective. Noah Thomason, Jabri, Abdul-Rahim, they combine for 25 points. Both shoot about 35.5% or so from 3-point range, but only guy that really sees meaningful minutes that shoots about 36% from 3-point range, Ebby Dillon James, and he's been able to come on strong recently, shooting 42.5% from the outside, had 14 big points in that game against Wake Forest, but very much a hit-or-miss guy. Ohio State, they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball against a Georgia unit that they just haven't been able to force a lot of turnovers in general, and it is an Ohio State team that they're starting to give up their points. They've given up at least 73 points in each of their last 4 games. I do think that with what is on the line, that is going to bog things down a little bit. Now that you've got a chance to go to the NIT Final Four, the motivation, I think, is going to be a little bit more there. And this is an Iowa State team that, while they're playing a little bit faster, it is a Georgia team that as well, they have seen a little bit of a drop-off in terms of their offense when they've been away from home as well. This is a Georgia team that, even though they don't necessarily turn the ball over a ton, they just have a tough time with their shot making in general in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Georgia 187th in all of college basketball. So did set my total 147. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. I like the way that Ohio State is rolling. Willing to lay up to 8.5 with them. This is going to be the DK Network right at pick 611, 612. Indiana State plays at home against Cincinnati. Yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati, they're on to being an underdog of 2.5 points. Your total on this game, you're going to be getting it anywhere between a 154 to a 155. I did set my total at a 153.5. I'm going to be looking at the under. You do have a Cincinnati team that is going to be without 2 of their top 4 scorers in this game, and I do think that that's key, and that leads into the write-up. I'm going to be willing to lay with Indiana State. Said Indiana State is a 5.5 point favorite. Even if this goes up to like 3.5, I'd be willing to lay it with the Sycamores. This is very meaningful for them because the NIT Final Four, that's out there in Hinkle Fieldhouse. That's on Butler's home campus, so that is very much in the state, so I feel like they're going to be motivated to be able to get the job done there. And on top of that, I was leading into the injuries with Cincinnati as to a reason why I'm taking a look at the under. They're going to be without Victor Lakeen, who's been able to give you about 9 points, 6 boards, very good down low for this team, and the Day Thomas, who's been leading the team in assists and steals, 10.5 points, 3 assists, 1.7 steals per contest. That's big for a Cincinnati team that they really don't shoot it amazing from 3-point range, as I was alluding to, 129th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis while shooting 32.5% from the outside. Now, Day Thomas wasn't really shooting a ball from 3-point range. That's actually Simeus Lucasius, who's your top 3-point shooter. 6'8", do a little bit of everything sort of guy, 3 boards, 3 assists, 11.5 points per contest, and then Dan Skillings has been able to do a solid job supplying the team with 13.6 boards for a Cincinnati team that their biggest edge is on glass. They're a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. This is an Indiana State team that they're not quite 15th in the country, but you tell that they've got some very good size. Robbie Avila, we all know about him at this point. He's been able to give you 17 plus points, 6 plus boards, totals out 4 assists, shooting nearly 40% from 3-point range. And for Indiana State, that balanced 3-point shooting I think is so big. Each of your top 6 scorers shoot at least 34.7% from 3 against D1 competition. They are 12th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. I mentioned Indiana State has a disadvantage on glass. It's not a massive one. They're still in the top 50 with regards to their rebound rate. You've got Ryan Conwell along with Isaac Swope. Both of these guys combined for about 32.5 points per contest, with Conwell being able to shoot 42% from 3-point range. And in a nip and tuck situation, your top 6 scorers all shoot at least 73% of the free throw line. All but one shoot above 80% at the free throw line. So if this comes down to some late game fouling, you're able to feel secure there. Now it is a Cincinnati team that has been able to play relatively well towards their defense all season long. For what they do lack on the just offensive side of things in general, defense is a bit better, but they do rank about 217th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. With Indiana State's versatility, that's going to be big. I do think that Cincinnati is going to look to bog things down a little bit, especially with them deal with a issue of depth. And for Cincinnati, they are 21st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they are giving up a full 10.1 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and giving up nearly 35% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot court setting, while Indiana State pretty rock solid with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage defense when they are at home. I do think that Indiana State gets the job done here. I do think that Cincinnati slows this game down a little bit, set my total 153.5. Looking at the under, but my write-up, that is going to be laying the number with the Sycamores, willing to lay up to 5 with them. And now we hit the 2 CBI games. Both of these games are off the board. These teams had to survive an advance yesterday to get to today, and books are not really betting down the hatches to get up openers on the CBI, much like they would in terms of the NCAA tournament. So let's go 6-15, 6-16 on the betting board. It is Arkansas State facing off against High Point. Like I said, no numbers up on this game, and this is a game that's out there in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I set my line to where I'm willing to lay up to 3 with High Point. Made them a 3.5-point favorite, so 4 or more, I'd be willing to take the points with Arkansas State, and did set my total at a 163.5. 163 or less, looking over 164 or higher to the under. And I will say for Arkansas State, their games are a little bit slower when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. Arkansas State has very demonstrative home and road splits. Going into yesterday, they were shooting north of 42% as a collective from 3-point range at home, about 30% away from home. And for Arkansas State, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they see a drop off of about 23.3 points per 100 possessions when they leave home. But they're going up against a High Point team that entered into yesterday 6th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. When they're away from home, this drops off to more like 12th. But man, this team has been very dominant with that regard, and this is a High Point team that is a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of rebound rate. And Arkansas State is not bad. They're a top 100 team with regards to their rebound rate as well, but they just don't compare to what you're able to get down low out of this bunch, as you've got Jocelyn Bodu who's able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per contest. You've got a bunch that has a really good backcourt. Abdoulaye Thiam is one of your main returners from season ago. He's been able to do a very rock solid job supplying this team with 14 plus points per contest. And then out there in the backcourt, you've got 2 guys that dole out the ball, Duke Miles along with Keza Gifa. They are combining for about 6.5 assists per contest between the 2 of them. You're able to get about 33.5 points per contest. Miles shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. You've got a 38% 3-point shooter in Trey Benham, who's been able to do a solid job. High Point, relatively up-tempo team that is about 200th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But with Bodu, I undersold him. Kamani Hamilton is giving you more around 6 to 7 rebounds per game. Bodu more around 9.5 boards to go along with his 2 blocks per contest. These 2 guys have been dominant down low. And for Arkansas State, you do have some good versatility with having DeAndre Dominguez be able to give you about 6 boards, pops a few threes, and then Isaiah Nelson gives you 7 rebounds per game as well. But this team really suffers with their 3-point shooting when they're away from home. Now, I will say for Arkansas State, they actually don't do a bad job of guarding the arc away from home when they're in a roadside shoot court setting. Opponents shoot less than 33% from 3-point range against them, so that's a little bit of a good mark for the team. Meanwhile, it is a High Point team that they are going to give up a few looks from 3-point range. I do think that Arkansas State can shoot better than the normal, about 30% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot court setting. As High Point, they allow opponents to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range away from home, but this is just such a good team in terms of taking care of the ball against an Arkansas State team that doesn't necessarily force a lot of turnovers. I think that there's going to be a lot of good shot making in this game. You've got a High Point team that has really been able to just run it and gun it. This team has gotten to at least 77 points in now 4 of their last 5 games, and got an Arkansas State team that has been able to put up some very good numbers as well. This team has now gotten to at least 71 points in 5 straight as well. So 163 or less looking over, 164 or higher the under. Well, with a 5 point, willing to lay up to 3 points with them, 4 more. Taking the points with Arkansas State, and we wrap things up with 617, 618. Seattle and Fairfield do battle. No numbers up on this game, but made Seattle 2-point favorite. Willing to lay up to 1.5 with them, 2.5 or more. Taking those points with Fairfield, and then 143.5 or less. I'll be looking at the over, 144.5 or higher. The under now. For anyone that backed Fairfield yesterday, that was all sorts of brutal as they just bricked a whole bunch of free throws in general. And man, that one was rough to say the least, but I do think that for Seattle, they're going to be able to do a solid job on the glass. The biggest issue that you do have with Fairfield is that they are about 250th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate, but I will say this, with Alexis Yetna being back in fold, someone who has had a long, winding road, has dealt with a bunch of injuries, was at South Florida, was at Seton Hall, this guy is really transforming what Fairfield is able to give you down low, so even though their metrics tell you that they're a bad rebounding team, I mean, this guy's come on, he's been able to give this team 8+ rebounds in each of the last 4 games, so they are very much stronger on that front. You've got Caleb Fields, who went off for 32 points yesterday for a Fairfield team. That's about 100th in all of college basketball. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis for Fairfield. Away from them, they're shooting as a collective about 36 at 36.5% from 3-point range. And for Seattle, this team does turn the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like. Seattle, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, well outside the top 250 nationally, as they're turning the ball over darn near 13 times per contest, but they also are a very good defensive team. They're a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They don't generate as many steals and turnovers as Fairfield, and that is going to be an issue for the Seattle offense, as Fairfield is a top 50 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but the Seattle team, they're going to get up in your grill. They're going to do a tremendous job defensively, and it's been a defense that has been able to travel, even though they do give up 11 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home, when your just baseline is 20th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That is of impact. You've got Kobe Williamson, Brandon Chartfield down low, a pair of guys that have been able to do a solid job, giving you combined about 11.5 boards per game. Williamson is able to give you a block and a half per game, and then Alex Shoemaker, Jason Christophilius, they combine for about 26.5 points per contest, while Cam Tyson, he's your main man, 17.5 points, shoots 38% from 3-point range. For a Seattle team as collective, they shoot about 34.5% from 3, and while Seattle is hovering right around about 200th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Going into yesterday, they were actually averaging more points per possession when they were away from home rather than when they were at home, and I do think that this is going to be a nip and tuck game, close enough for some late game filling, so 143.5 or less, looking at the over, 144.5 or higher, looking at the under with Seattle. Made them a 2-point favorite, one to lay up to 1.5 with Seattle, 2.5 or more, taking those points with Fairfield, and that will wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to Justin Perri over at Chalk Wally Bets for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at GN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please just send these into the timeline, and the other way, that's fine, an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like here on this podcast via that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'll be with you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.